Honestly speaking, yeah, I think it's probably from a laboratory. It's man-made, and it was.
I think most people believe that the virus are from the laboratory, not from natural source. Most people don't believe that it is from nature.
There is also this thing about bioweapon, right? And that's also believed like widely. And people do talk about viruses that are made by people.
On April the 31st, the President of the United States said he had evidence that COVID-19 originated in a laboratory in Wuhan. But this is nothing new. It's something a lot of people have been saying for a long time.
Before Trump said in the news yesterday,
Yes.
Most Vietnamese people don't believe it is an accident from nature.
Why not?
Because we kind of always think that China have some.
You think they have a secret agenda?
Yeah, I think so.
And it may not necessarily come from that lab, but yeah. And there are so many other conspiracies.
There's certainly no shortage of conspiracy theories. They never landed on the moon. The moon's an alien spaceship. Marilyn Monroe was murdered. And 9/11 was an inside job. But most people don't buy into those kinds of conspiracy theories. Why is this one different?
Because the logic goes like this, if for thousands of years, if they've been eating all that, how did it come suddenly? And that there is a laboratory in Wuhan as well.
Of course, there are also plenty of people who believe that there's no sinister agency at work here at all.
Maybe it was just a virus that leaked from animals and spread to humans, and everyone is doing as much as they can to contain the virus. So I don't actually believe it's a bioweapon or tool of mass destruction.
For me, at this point, all I do is listen and listen and listen, because I'm not a scientist.
Alan's perfectly right. We're not scientists. We're teachers. What I'd like to do in this video is focus on our responsibilities as teachers in the face of various theories concerning the origin of coronavirus COVID-19.
Educating ourselves, and then as we become educators, you want to encourage students to and anybody around to just check your sources.
The issue of false reporting, myth, superstition, simply bad science, and of course the need to prey off of other people with false information has been one of the, I suppose, negative aspects of the print media and, well, the media explosion.
Okay, so there's fake news and we want our students to recognize it, but how does one recognize whether a news item is true or false?
I've even heard some experts say that this virus was clearly genetically modified and they were trying to prove it. So it makes it hard for me to take any side of the whole thing. So.
Now, this is the heart of the problem, isn't it? How do we as teachers encourage our students to recognize and reject fake news when we ourselves are very often faced with information that comes from conflicting sources and gives conflicting accounts, and we ourselves don't know what to believe?
The problem that you've touched upon, is a big one, and so I have to look at what can I do within my small, tiny area of influence. As a language teacher in Japan, I'm thinking, and I have been thinking over the past couple of years, that language teachers need to incorporate much more in the way of critical thinking instruction in their language lessons.
Okay, critical thinking. Sounds good. In practical terms, though, what exactly would that involve? Because I think a lot of people would look at something like this, which I found online, and they'd say, hey, yeah, I analyze, I reason, I evaluate, I solve problems, and I make decisions. I already have critical thinking skills. I don't need any of this. So let's try to go through this step by step. Let's see if we can apply the principles of critical thinking to the issue of the origins of COVID-19 and coronavirus in general. Before I start, let me make the basic point that critical thinking is about teaching people how to think. It is absolutely and definitively not about telling them what to think. They may end up still disagreeing with us. It doesn't matter. The point is that they arrive at their conclusions through logical reasoning and sound premises. Here's another diagrammatic representation of critical thinking that I found online. This one's from the Open University. Let's take a look at this section in the top right-hand corner. The starting point is to identify assumptions. Well, let's try and do that. Let's look at one of the arguments put forward in support of the idea that the COVID-19 was developed in a laboratory and is not of natural origin. Well, there you go. There's an assumption. We're assuming that viruses didn't transfer themselves to humans in the past. But do we really know that? The next step is to find out whether our assumption is accurate, whether it's valid. Well, let's do that. In fact, let's go right back to the beginning and review everything we think we know about the coronavirus, just in case there's something we've missed. Okay, yeah, this looks like something that's going to tell me what I want to know. According to the World Health Organization, coronaviruses are a group of illnesses that include the common cold and transfer themselves from animals to humans. Is that right? Surely the common cold is much older than the ability of humans to modify things genetically. I'd better check this out. I found another website that confirmed for me that the common cold is a coronavirus which crossed species from two animal origins, bats and cattle, over the last 200 years. Probing a bit deeper, I found plenty of other web pages and academic papers, such as this one from 2018, warning that precisely something like this present pandemic was very likely to occur. I found plenty of other websites explaining the process of transmission from other animals into humans, some of them involving a complex mechanism involving several species. And then finally, I got to check out how long this process has been going on for. Thousands of years. So now we can go back to that assumption and say with some confidence that it's incorrect. These diseases have been transferring themselves to humans for a very long time. It doesn't destroy the whole argument. It doesn't prove that the virus was not made in a laboratory, but it takes away one of the arguments in support of that theory, and we can use that in discussion, in debate, when we talk to others.
They were working on it, I suppose, and it was a mishap.
Yeah.
Because there are laboratories that work on deadly viruses, right?
Yes.
So it's sort of believed like it could have been a mishap.
Yeah. I mean, did people feel the same about like the bird flu when it came out a few years ago, or the swine flu? Did they have the same idea that it was?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, the rumors are flying about coronavirus, but did they have the same feelings about those, or did they accept that they were caused naturally?
Nobody came up with such conspiracies that it was created.
Yeah. They're only saying it about coronavirus.
Yeah.
We've really only just started to scratch the surface here, but already there are a few things that are becoming apparent. What's really struck me is that it takes quite a lot of courage to question our assumptions and think critically about them. We take comfort from our beliefs. And once they're thrown into doubt, we have to face our fear. And we are fearful, and rightly so, because we're in the middle of a pandemic that has already killed hundreds of thousands of people, and it shows no signs of slowing down. Taking refuge in the idea that we know what's really going on gives us a sense of having some power, some control over the situation. And giving that up and accepting that our theories may be wrong is not easy. In the end, though, what I'm thinking is that for ourselves as teachers, for our students, and for society as a whole, surely it's better for us to face an uncertain reality than to hold on to certainties that really have no basis in fact. Well, there's plenty more to be said about this topic, so stay tuned for the next instalment.